Hey class, in today's lesson we're going to talk about quadratic formula, which is found in section 4-7 part 1 of your book. Our objective is to solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So if you've not seen the quadratic formula before, here it is. So it's x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So following that formula, we can then find the solutions a different way using that formula. So here we go. So the first thing we have to do is first be sure that everything is in standard form. So our first equation is not in standard form, so let's go ahead and correct that. So in order to get this in standard form, I need to subtract 4 on both sides. And I'm left with 2x squared minus x minus 4 equal to 0. Okay, our a, b, and c would be 2, negative 1, and negative 4. So if we substitute that into the formula, our formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's start substituting. That would be, I'm going to do that over here. That would be negative 1, right? Plus or minus the square root of b squared, which would be negative 1 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 4, over 2 times a, which is still 2. Okay, we're going to start simplifying that. So negative 1 is 1. Plus or minus the square root of negative 1 squared is 1. Negative 4 times 2 times negative 4 is going to give you, let's see, that's negative 8 times negative 4, which is positive 32 over 4. If you keep going, that's 1 plus or minus the square root of 33 over 4. And we cannot reduce, so we would stop here as our answer. So one of the answers would be the positive version and one answer would be the negative version. So those answers would be 1 plus the square root of 33 over 4. And the other one is 1 minus the square root of 33 over 4. Okay, so that's how we do the first one. Now I need to clear this out so that I can do the second problem. So I'm just going to erase this information down here. All right, so let's look at the second one. So a is 1, b is 6, c is 9. Okay, if we substitute that information in, we're going to have negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 9 over 2 times 1. If I keep going, that'd be negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 36 over 2. Okay, if I keep going from that, 36 minus 36 we know is 0. So that's really negative 6 over 2. So then technically in this case we only have one answer, and that answer is negative 3. Okay, let's look at our try. So again, we need to be sure that our first equation is in standard form and this first one is not, so we need to add 4 to both sides. Therefore, we're left with x squared plus 4x plus 4 equal to 0. So a is 1, b is 4, c is 4. So if we remember the formula, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That would give us for this problem negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4 over 2 times 1. If I keep going, that's negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 16 all over 2. We know 16 minus 16 is 0, so that would give us negative 4 over 2, which is negative 2. And technically, I shouldn't leave it like that. Our real solution is x equals negative 2. Okay, let's do the second one. I'm just going to start by substituting. So here we go. Negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 3 all over 2 times 1. That gives us negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 12 over 2. 16 plus 12 is 28, so it's negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 28 over 2. So that's negative 4 plus or minus, oh, nope, we're just going to leave that. So one thing that we haven't had to deal with, let me get rid of that. One thing that we haven't had to deal with so far is actually having to simplify the radicand. So our radicand 28 can be simplified. Remember, if you do a factor tree, 28 is really 2 and 14 is really 2 and 7. So if I write that as a radical, this is 2 square root of 7. So if I rewrite this, this becomes negative 4 plus or minus the 2 square root of 7 over 2. Now that works out very nicely because 2 actually does go into both numbers at the top. Now 2 cannot reduce the radicand, but it can reduce the number in front of the radicand. So I can reduce negative 4 by 2 to get negative 2. And obviously the 2 by 2 to make that 1. So our final answer here will be negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 7. And remember, you can break those up into 2 separate answers. So that's negative 2 plus the square root of 7 or negative 2 minus the square root of 7 as our final answer. So one thing about this problem is if you have not really dealt with reducing radicals very well, or simplifying them or rewriting them in another way, be sure that you continue to practice on that because it is really important with the quadratic formula. Okay, in example 2, we're applying the quadratic formula. It says your school's jazz band is selling CDs as a fundraiser. The total profit P depends on the amount X that your band charges for each CD. The equation below models the profit of the fundraiser. What is the largest amount in dollars you can charge for a CD to make a profit of 200? Okay, that last piece is really important for our equation. So a profit of 200 now means that P is 200. So I'm going to cross that out and put 200. Now remember, to even solve any of these things, we need to be sure that this is in standard form. I need to move 200. So that gives me 0 equal to, not P, negative x squared plus 48x minus 500. So using our A, B, and C, A would be negative 1, B would be 48, and C would be negative 500. So let's go ahead and use a quadratic formula here. So x equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. That will give us, I'm going to kind of move it up here a little bit, that will give us negative 48 plus or minus the square root of, and I need to do that on my calculator, so let's see. Mm-hmm. 48 squared is 2,304. Negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4, and positive 4 times negative 500 would be negative 2,000 all over negative 2. Now if I keep going, that's going to give me negative 48 plus or minus the square root of 304 over negative 2. Okay, 304 well, really at this point, this is where, because we're talking about a dollar amount, so we don't want to leave anything as a radical because that's not really going to help us. So what we're going to do now is fully go through and simplify. So what that means that we'll do is we will take negative 48. So one of the answers will be negative 48 plus the square root of 304 over negative 2. We're going to figure out what that answer is. So in your calculator, first find out what the square root of 304 is. I get about 17.4355, all that kind of stuff. And then add that to negative 48. And then divide that by negative 2. And I get about, and it should be about $15.28. Okay? For the other one, right? So if the first one was positive, this another one needs to be negative. So I'm going to pick a different color. So let's say this is negative 48 minus the square root of 304 over negative 2. So here we go. Negative square root of 304 will be negative 17 point whatever. Then I'm going to subtract 48. I'm going to divide that by negative 2. And that gives me about $32.72. Okay. In the end, it asks us what is the largest amount that they can charge to make a profit. And so the largest amount they can charge is $32.72. And we are done. In try 2, it goes back to ask in example 2, what is the least amount you can charge for each CD to make a profit of $100? So if you remember that equation, I believe it said P equals negative x squared plus 48x minus 300. Okay, P is 100. And now we need to subtract 100 on both sides. So 0 will equal negative x squared plus 48x minus 400. Okay, we go through that same process. So x equals negative 48 plus or minus the square root of 48 squared minus 4 times negative 1 times negative 400 all over 2 times negative 1. Okay, that's negative 48 plus or minus the square root of, and I forgot what 48 squared is, so I think it was 2,304. And then that becomes positive 4 times negative 400, so that's negative 1,600 over negative 2. So if I keep going, that's negative 48 plus or minus the square root of 2,304 minus 1,600 gives you 704 over negative 2. So remember, we need to split that up into two problems. So let's do the first one. The first one would be negative 48 plus the square root of 704 over negative 2. Okay, so let me figure that out. Square root of 704 is about 26.53. And if I subtract 48 from that, it's going to give me negative 21.4, about 47. And then divide that by negative 2. And that's about $10.73. Okay, the other one would be negative 48 minus the square root of 704 over negative 2. So when you do negative square root of 704, which would be about negative 26.53. If I subtract 48, that'll give me negative 74.53. divide that by -2, and that'll give me about $37.27. So the smaller or the least amount you can sell the CDs for is $10.73. Alright guys, that is it. If you have any questions, please come see me for tutoring so that I can fill in any gaps that you may have.